You're listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour. Today, we are talking about the art of war for startups. This is a book that I read, I think, when I was 16 years old. I was very fascinated by it. I know it's about 2,500 years old, and it's going to be a very interesting session because we've been lucky to get Rucha Joshi on, who did an analysis and did a really cool article on the internet. If you search the art of war for startups, her article will pop up on the internet. And it's just very cool. So we'll jump right into it. But if you're in the audience and you want to participate in this conversation, this is Friday afternoon, right? So we just love to have people up on stage and chat about it. We're going to cover about 7 lessons that she has learned from the art of war for startups. We'll go through each of those lessons and have a discussion about some of the things that are in the each lesson teaches us. I'm actually driving right now. Internet's not the best, so hopefully it'll get better in a few minutes. I'm getting closer to Fort Lauderdale, coming across Alligator Alley, and Michelle, my co-moderator, is with me right now, but she is driving, so that's why she's not on the session, but she's going to listen in. All right, very good. So hitting it right out of the gate, Rucha, can you talk to us a little bit about the history of the book itself, and then we'll jump into your 7 lessons.
Yes, sure, Colin, definitely. The art of war is something that has lived through thousands of years, and when I first read it, I started reading the book as if something that would be helpful for geopolitics, something that we discussed last week as well. That when you read the book, all you're gonna see is strategies about enemies, troops, weapons and battlefields, but when you really start appreciating its depth, you would see that the strategies that are mentioned in this book called The Art of War, they are actually applicable to your everyday lives and as well as your businesses, be it startups or MSMEs, or even if you are a sports person, or even if when you are a writer. So that is what compelled me or inspired me to write the article. And that article is the reason why I'm here speaking in front of you all wonderful people. So that is what I would
That's
like
very cool.
to. Yes.
Very cool. And, I think it's one of the books that is required reading for MBAs as well. Jeff, have you ever read The Art of War in the past?
I have not read the whole book, but I've read various excerpts of it in articles and other places over the years, but I've not actually read the whole thing.
Yeah, I know. It's so applicable. I think about, one of the comments Sun Tzu makes is uh, a spy is worth as much as an army. And in this business, you know, understanding, I'm not suggesting we go spy on our competitors, but we do this all the time. All of our companies, we do this. We're looking at, for instance, paw.com, we're looking at products that we can launch. So we go to Kickstarter and we go to different places like that to try to learn or get inspired, or go to trade shows to get inspired to build or design our own products that are better and more functional. And we know that others do that with us, that a lot of people have copied paw.com, even though we have patents on a number of our products. We've been copied, and we've seen them for sale in the stores. So I just thought that was an interesting one right there. But let's hit your first lesson, Rucha. If you could do it in about 60 seconds, just tell us what the first lesson is, and then we'll have an open conversation about that lesson and how it applies to business.
Yeah, sure, Colin. The first lesson I would say is, summarizing the entire book is it is about how to fight and how the battle which you're doing could be either a road to your ruin or your peace, or how you should take it ahead to make it a win, how you would emerge as victorious with the strategies you would apply on your battlefield. So in other words, I wouldn't call it the book of war, but instead it is about the book of strategies and understanding the root of any issues and how you would use the knowledge that you gather to find the solution for those issues and win. And it is also about psychology, ethics, and using leadership and different strategies in a concise and strict manner. So that is how I would summarize the entire book, and that would be my first lessons as well. Because when we speaking in terms of startups or business as well, because what would be the end goal of any entrepreneur? If you are a business owner, your goal would be to have the largest market share, and it doesn't matter which industry you are in, you will always have someone who is ready to take your position. And it is nothing less than a war, and you need to have your strategies in place to ensure that you stay there, and you stay there for a really long time.
Yeah, so the one we're looking at here on the site is uh, attack at undefended areas. Is that lining up with what we were talking about there with the first lesson? It's like the strategy, and it's really trying to figure out, okay, we know other businesses have these products, so we don't want to go directly head on with that company. What we want to do is we want to create something that is unique and different that can compete with them because they're not as strong. But if there's a company that dominates, let's say, for instance, they dominate the tablets, it's Apple. Like, are we going to take them on? No, right? Can we come up with a niche or a different product that works, such as a Remarkable 2, the way Remarkable came out with their products? Because they didn't have a good notepad system in the iPad. Does that sort of describe it, Rucha?
Oh, yes, yes. When I talk about attacking the undefended area, okay, I'm back to the article now. I had the different things prepared for this session, but if you're gonna mention those seven strategies, I do have in my screen right now. I'm looking at the article, and when I say attack at the undefended area, what I'm talking about is that if you read The Art of War, if you have written the book, you've read the book, you would know that it is all about finding the weakness of your enemies. And not the you won't win by attacking their strong position, because they're already strong there. And if you are losing, if you're gonna do a battle that you're gonna lose, it makes no sense. Instead, what we can do is we can find areas where they are weakest, and use those areas for your own advantage. And that's how you attack the undefended area. Let's just say there is this one company who offers this amazing product, but their customer service is not at the par, or there are some areas where they are not very good, or they were not able to make a wow factor for their customers. And this is something you can take advantage of. And that is what I mean when I say attack the undefended area.
Yeah, any thoughts, Jeff, or audio? You just want to pop out there on this attack the undefended areas. Any
Well, I
thoughts
think
about that topic?
I think just thinking about it from war, physical war's point of view. I mean, it's really looking at where are the weak points geographically to in territory, and in business that could mean where are products, where are your competitors selling their products versus where is there a need for those products and they're not being sold there yet. So you can take over that territory, which would be a weak territory from your competitor's point of view because they're not in that area. And that could be regionally, that could be going into a retailer. If you're selling a retail product, maybe going into a retailer where those products aren't typically sold. So for example, just to give an example from paw.com, the company that I'm the CMO of, our beds are very design focused. They don't look like a typical dog bed. They look like a beautiful area rug. So we have the opportunity to sell our beds in home decor stores and places where, dog beds are not typically sold. So instead of being one of 100 different dog beds in a pet store, we might be the only dog bed being sold in a home design store, or a furniture store. So that would give us an edge in that territory, and we would be, I think, as you say, Rusha, we would be attacking the undefended area in that example.
And you actually attacked Canada too. Like you expanded into Canada, and from what I know is we seem to actually have stronger sales in Canada because there's just so much less competition as well. So that's interesting. Just looking at the paw.com story and how it applies. Are we on the right track, Rucha, with your theory?
Yes, definitely. We're on the right track. And often the mistake entrepreneurs make is that, instead of attacking the undefended areas, they just go to secluded areas where it's like a solution looking for a problem, and there are just not enough customers. Let's just say you are attacking a land which has absolutely no value. It would also make no sense. Just because it is undefended, it doesn't mean that it is something that you can easily win, because even if you do win that area, the position value would not make any sense because you're not getting anything out of it. So it is always the best strategy to look for opportunities where the competition is less, or where your competitors are very weak. So that is something that would ensure your success, where enemies are weak and there is demand, and that's how you win a market.
That's interesting because in the 2000s, a company called Ostopia that we founded, we had a competition from Google. They had a site design product as well, and uh, in 2012, we went up against VeriSign with .com by launching an alternate to .com, which was .club, and we were able to actually find our niche. We found enough market, like you say, you have to have enough market to survive, but we found enough market. Um, and Audio, did you have any thoughts on this topic before we jump to the second lesson?
About Art of War? Well, I
But
don't know.
well, just about art of war, or about the lesson about this idea of attacking undefended territory.
Yeah, I mean, the metaverse or the internet is still like, attackable. And, just geotagging on Instagram as a strategy or a tactic to me is like profound because you can introduce content into geotags on Instagram that have nothing to do with the location. So if there's like if you had a list of the top 100 geotags on Instagram, like that's a lot of traffic. So I don't have that list. I've never Googled it, but I think for like metaverse attacking. I mean, if you're a startup and you're running a guerrilla war, you have and you don't have advertising dollars to buy eyeballs on Instagram. So I'm just saying that there's like strategies to manipulate. I've always been intrigued with spamming and finding loopholes or arbitrage spreads, ad tech and advertising arbitrage spreads. um, and boy, you can make a lot of money. I mean, some of the richest people I know are just like, world famous spammers like Scott Richter, who started, I mean, he was called like the spam affiliate king by, I think it was John Oliver on The Daily Show. But, anyways, I'm just saying that like
Yeah.
Google ad revenue is, you can become a multimillionaire this year if you know how to spam.
Well, I mean, there's different ways of doing it, right? But one thing you brought up there was this notion or idea that and startups are very nimble and very quick, whereas big corporations can be a little slow to the market. So, take a new industry like the metaverse, there's opportunities for startups because they're not competing against big companies. Now, obviously, with the metaverse, you've got Meta and Roblox, and I'm not necessarily talking about creating your own metaverse, but I am saying that there's a lot of opportunity in any new space. Airbnb is another example, right? There's a whole shift in the way that second homes are being managed, and there's opportunities for people who want to get involved because the big companies just haven't arrived yet. And that's something we learned from a prior session with Jeffrey Moore. who wrote Crossing the Chasm, and he was on this show, and he talked about seizing the moment or the day, seizing the day or the opportunity for the startup because the big corporations just are too risk averse to jump into some of these new industries. So I think that was really good. Look, all right, Rucha, we're going to keep moving on here. We'll jump over to your second lesson.
My second lesson is forming a win win alliance. Sun Tzu talks about how diplomacy could be far better solution than fighting to death.
I'm sorry, Rucha, you
And
said,
that
can you
is
say that again?
what
Just say that one more time. I'm sorry, I missed it. Winning alliances, is that what you said?
Yes, win-win alliance is the second lesson with which I mentioned. How creative diplomacy is far more better than fighting to the death in terms of battle. You know how in the older times there used to be mergers and marriages between two nations, which they choose over battle. So that is what we can call win-win alliance in businesses as well. Like how there are like how your best competitor could be your best partner as well, because instead of fighting for market share, what you could do is you could bring the best from both of your business and build a mutually benefiting plan. So it's something competition and how it would move competitors away from the idea that the winner would take everything and losers are left with nothing. Instead, you would replace that approach with a plus sum game where results are profitable for everyone involved because you're all working together. And yes, I do understand that there are some drawbacks to the strategy when we talk about competition. But if we consider the advantages that it offers, it could be one of the key strategy for the growth of your business as well.
Very good. Jeff, any thought about this co-opetition? I know that paw.com sells on Chewy, for instance. A lot of our products are sold on Chewy, so they're sort of a competitor, but they're also sort of a distributor. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, I think just in general, very few industries are a zero-sum game where, as Rusha was saying, where winner takes all. There's always room for a number of players, and in most verticals, a number of very successful players. There's not one automotive manufacturer, there's not one soft drink manufacturer. There are many. Even if one or two may be in a more dominant position, there's room for many others. And I think maybe part of this notion of the win-win alliance too is the notion that a rising tide lifts all ships, and in some burgeoning markets, that's very important. We saw that, Colin, in the domain namespace when we were launching .club, along with many other new alternative top-level domains, alternatives to .com. It was important. We would cheer on some of our so-called competitors because it was important for consumers to become aware that all these choices were out there. So as long as they were using any of the new top level domains, it would benefit all of the new top level domains. I think we're seeing that now in the electric car space, in the EV space. Yes, Tesla was sort of first to market in many respects, and certainly a leader. But Tesla is also very supportive of all the other car manufacturers getting involved in the electric space. I've heard Elon Musk talk about that in interviews because the relative market to overall gas-powered car sales is still very, very small for EVs, and the opportunity for consumer awareness and consumer acceptance and competition driving pricing down and creating demand for more readily available charging stations is something that benefits Tesla along with all the other EV manufacturers. So they are competitors, but they're also cooperative in the sense that they need to grow the marketplace and the demand for EV vehicles. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right, Rusha?
Oh, yes, yes. And win-win alliance is something I see not a lot of business doing out here. because they are all about killing the competitors, and I don't think that should be the case. Instead, I mean, it is bad for the consumers, but it's good for the business.
Great. Well, why don't we hit number three? Why don't we go for lesson number three from the art of war? And again, if you're in the audience and you have some thoughts on these topics, it's Friday afternoon, and we'd love to have you on stage to chat about any of these thoughts or ideas. So, lesson number three, Rucha.
Yes, the lesson number three is thorough preparation before battles. And if you ask me, like my one favorite strategy from the book Art of War, I would say there's this famous quote: if you know yourself and your enemy, you're gonna win every battle. And if you know yourself but not your enemy, with every win, you will suffer a loss. And if you don't know yourself nor your enemy, you're gonna lose every battle. So in this quote, around this quote, I this made this third lesson, that is thorough preparation before battles. And it's like you gotta know your competitive advantages, and to know those and to develop your to build your competitive advantage, you gotta know your strengths and weaknesses as well as your competitors. Because when you know your business inside out, that is when you could build an competitive advantage. I often see businesses making the mistake of assuming that they could just go with the flow and build a competitive advantage as they go forward. There are businesses who have found success using this strategy, but this is not something that I would agree with. I think it is best if you study the market, look at the consumer trends, or look at the regulation or the development happening today or 5 years from now on, because it could impact your business both negatively and positively. So this is something I would say, going prepared before you enter the market, or even when you are in the market, you are actively growing your business even then. Because even if let's just say I had this very interesting example, if you'd like me to share.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so many of you may know already about the UPI in India. It's a payment system in India. And when it was launched, I found this story so interesting that when it was launched, it almost wiped out the entire payment wallets business in India. Because with UPI, you can directly pay vendors from your bank accounts. There is no need for additional wallet. Like you can just, there's no need to add your money in some wallet and then make a payment. And they just remove that one step in the process, just pay directly from your account, and that entire space was made redundant. I mean, there are businesses, wallet businesses, who were proactive, and I saw them react quickly to this development. And they either integrated UPI in their services and started offering different services. They expanded their business. And those who fail to make those quick decisions, they are no longer there in the market. So I think it is it's imperative that we are aware of the developments that are happening in the industry. It is good to be thoroughly prepared, knowing what your competitors are doing and what is the overall scenario that is happening in the market which you're operating in. Because interestingly, UPI was also so great for small businesses, because now, I mean, there was also an interesting study which said that businesses are at the risk of losing their customers to their competitors if they continue to rely on cash or other traditional payments methods, because everyone is preferring UPI because of its simplicity. And I just love this case study so
It's
much, that how
fascinating.
UPI disrupted the entire space.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I think of what you're talking about here. We call it the X factor. And Vern Harnish describes it this way, that if there's a bottleneck in an industry and you can solve that bottleneck, you can win the marketplace. And it's called the X factor. And I encourage every startup to try to figure out what their X factor is and what can make them different and unique in that industry. For example, you think of Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes are free. That became their X factor when they first launched. A company in Canada, I think Pizza, did the same thing, 30 minutes are free. They were the first up in Toronto. I remember having a pizza restaurant in Toronto at the time saying, oh, there's no way they can do it. They're going to lose so much money. But you know what they did is they re-engineered their entire systems so they could deliver on that promise. That's an example of one there. Another one is I love this one, National Car Rental. Bit like your UPI story, right? They solved a little problem and they totally won the market. Well, National Car Rental solved the problem of showing up at an airport and having to line up for 30 minutes to rent your car. Now I just show up to an airport, walk onto the lot, and drive through security and show them your ID on the way out, and it's just so much faster. And I pick and choose the car that I want. They've totally re-engineered their systems and designs, so that gave them the X factor. So what is your X factor? What is your UPI story, right? So that's interesting. Any thoughts, Jeff, before we jump to lesson number 4?
Well, I think that, you talked about the X factor, but the actual lesson was about preparedness. And I just think, just in general, it's such an important thing, not just for your business battles, but even from your personal battles. We all have all the world's information at our fingertips today. So there's absolutely no excuse to walk into a job interview or a business meeting or a sales pitch, or a fundraising meeting without knowing everything you could possibly know about the person you're meeting with. If you're trying to raise money for your startup and you're meeting with the VCs, you should know, every company that's in their portfolio. You should know the personal interests of the partner that you're meeting with because you've looked at their social media accounts and you realize that they play golf every weekend and they're a golfer, and that may be something you can connect with them on, or whatever it may be. So this idea of walking into the battle fully prepared is something that we should be practicing in all aspects of our life. And it's never been easier to enter any battle fully prepared than it is today because of our access to information.
Well, it's interesting because I've done trade shows with you, Jeff, and at the beginning of the trade show, you always have everybody come together and you hand out, these are the talking points, these are the is that kind of planning? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's even, yes, and it's even deeper than that. It's just knowing if you know you're going to be meeting with a certain person, let's say you're trying to sell your products to or raise money from, whatever. Not only should you know all about their business, meaning, what kind of products they sell, what other types of companies have they invested in, if it's an investment meeting, but know about that person. It's so easy to find out personal information because we all are posting stuff on social media. So you can find out that someone, I used golf as example, it could be sailing, it could be knitting, it could be whatever. But if you walk into a meeting and you can let someone know, oh, uh, I realize that you're a big golfer. I once played at blah 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 course. Have you ever played there? All of a sudden, you're connecting on a level that's not just about the sale or the investment and everything else. And it'll also prepare you if you know that you're walking into a meeting and they don't like a particular thing, then don't bring it up. Then you'll know not to bring it up. Remove that thing from your pitch if you know it's something they don't like. So if you know that they're all about sustainable investing in businesses that have sustainable aspects, then make sure that your presentation is highlighting whatever sustainability your company has, which is something you might not have highlighted in a different meeting with a different potential investor. So it's really just about leveraging our insane access to information, both business and personal, and to use that to your advantage in the battle.
Awesome. All right. Art of War, lesson number 4. Over to you, Rucha, again.
Oh, yes. Before we move to lesson number 4, I really want to thank Jeffrey for summarizing the point which I was trying to make really well. You did a wonderful job, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. The fourth point, moving on, the strengths and weaknesses. What I'm telling to convey over here is that winning general is always aware of his troops' weaknesses and strengths. Similarly, entrepreneurs must also know and leverage their current team's competencies while also offering the backup and direction to minimize weaknesses in selecting the target market. In fact, knowing your weaknesses alone is not enough. You got to know the weaknesses and strengths of your competitors as well, because you need to constantly compare yourself to your competitors and look at the strength of their team, look at the quality of their products, their services, and why their customers are loyal to them, and what you could do to turn the tables around, like where are their weaknesses, and how you can turn those weaknesses into your own strength and win the competition, right? You gotta outrun your competitors to be there in the market. And as part of, I'm so much into digital media at this point that I even compare their position across social media and other digital platforms as well, like what kind of engagement level they have with their audience and what kind of messaging that they are sending to their audience, what they are doing better, and what you could be doing to make improvements in your own messaging or in your own self. It's The point is that you need to analyze the gap if you want to outrun your competitors. So for that, you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses as well. I again, when you talked about airport, I am reminded of another case study which I recently read, not recently, like few months back. It's about the Indian aviation market. I would like to share that. Like in 2000s, all the airline companies there in India were making huge losses, right? And companies had entered the market. One is Kingfisher and another is Indigo. And by the time we reach 2010s, Kingfisher noted like four times more loss than they were making when they just had started, whereas Indigo recorded profit when every other airline was making losses, right? And since then, it has captured like more than 50% of the market share. And how they did that is just so fascinating, because every time I travel with the airline, I ask myself this question, like, I see answers everywhere. Every time I travel with them, is like how they managed to survive is like they studied like where these big players were struggling in this industry and what mistakes that they were doing, and before they ventured into the market, they were already actually prepared, from opting for a different route model, the business model, and what mistake they should not be making to maximize their own profit and avoid incurring those huge losses that their peers were doing, right? And that is how they ensure their success. And I think the assessing the strengths and weaknesses of your own business as well as your competitors and what is happening in the industry together will help you win your business.
So it's interesting, Rusha, what you're saying is, so I have not gone to business school. I don't even have a business degree, even though I've been in business for 40 plus years. I was an English major, for what it's worth. But I know that in business school and in business classes, they talk a lot about doing a SWOT analysis. And I know, people are often taught to do a SWOT analysis for their business. Um, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Um, and I think what you're saying is not only should you be doing a SWOT analysis for your business, but it would actually be quite valuable to do a SWOT analysis of your competitor's business, and then look for those weaknesses as areas where you can attack to keep us within the war analogy, and then look at those areas of their strengths as areas for you to protect yourself against in some way. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, yes, because like every army, your competitors also gonna have weak points, whether they are ready to accept it or not. And with thorough assessment, you're gonna find those weak points, and you must keep your eyes out for their weak points, so you can pivot them whenever you have the right opportunity to lead yourself to the victory, or let's just say, winning the market share or going ahead of your competitors. Yes,
Well, it's absolutely
because
fascinating. This 50, but that they were able to grow to 50% market share in 10 years. And it's a great story that you told us there.
yeah, I find that study really fascinating, because the way they were aware of the strengths and weaknesses of the market is like what other players were doing. Is what they were doing is they were focusing more on customer comfort, when actually aviation business is very cost intensive and the fuel prices were soaring higher and higher. And if you look at the market, and if you look at the Indian market in general, it's a very cost conscious market, I would call. And they may wanna want the luxury, but at the same time they are worried about the cost. And if you are offering something cheaper, even if let's just say you have less amenities and less luxuries, they would still prefer to, especially if you're talking about domestic flights, they are like less than 3 hours of domestic flights, and they don't need those luxuries in those domestic 3 hours flight, right? They just need enough leg room, and they just need enough room to sit. And that's how what they did was they increased the efficiency of their flights. They also use, instead of point to point model, what they did was they instead adapted to some different hub and spoke model, where so it's also reducing their own I read that study a while back. But what they were doing in essence was getting the same amount of flights and greater flight routes with less amount of stop and less planes. So that's how they were able to, increase the efficiency, and in return they increase the profits as well, which was something none of the other players were doing. They were all about, giving the best services to their customers, and they had all the equipments which also increase the prices as well per flight, right? It's very expensive. And another thing which I noticed, what they did was all of their planes were Airbus. But other competitors, if you look them, they were a mix of Boeing and Airbus. So what they did was the pilots which they hired were mix of Boeing and Airbus as well. Whereas Indigo, they only had one kind of planes. So so they were also, they didn't require a high number of pilots, right? So that's how they won this huge market share, because of their efficiency and because of the different strategies. There are so many other strategies which they did, but I may not be the best person to explain them properly. But and that is how they won the market, right? That's what they did, which none of the other players were doing. And when this whole prices continued to rise, they were able to, like win, and they emerged after about all of the other competitors. And there are some big players we're talking about, and Indigo was just a niche, a new player in the market. So that is something huge.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So think first, act later. Lesson number 5. Think first, act later. And you talk about in your article how entrepreneurs and armies and generals they need to know which battles are worth fighting. So where to focus your resources and to not to waste time on small battles. Can you talk a little bit about lesson number 5?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I think we pretty much covered the same thing when we had this discussion. But yeah, we can talk further about it. When I say think first, act later is same as, being thoroughly prepared, because you gotta have all your strategies in place. You need to have your strengths and weaknesses. You have assessment of your competitors or enemy strengths and weaknesses in place. So before you are even out in the battlefield, you know whether you're gonna win this battle or not, because you have all the information you need right here. And Sun Tzu talks about how a skillful fighter seeks battles they know they can win. And in other words, it also conveys that if you know that your enemy is, let's just say, it's too strong, and you know you can't outwin it right now, at least in your own position, where you are right now. So in this case, the best would be to back down, because it doesn't make sense to fight a losing battle. You would only end up wasting your resources. Let's just say today I start Play Stores or App Stores competitor. I come up with my own Play Store, or my own app market. I would I would find it very hard to survive, because there are two giant players I know I won't be able to outrun. I would instead find a niche market and I would go there. So that is what it means when you think first and act later, because it wouldn't make any sense if you are not prepared, and if you are, if you're just gonna fight and lose the battle. Yes.
Yeah, I know. We
So I
Yeah,
think
go ahead,
Yeah,
Joe.
I know. We
No, I was gonna say, I think from what you said and from looking at the article too, and it's a little bit different from having the strategy, is, choosing your battles. You talk about, sometimes it's a better strategy to lose the small battle, and be better prepared for the big war. So not every little skirmish is worth fighting over. And I think in business, that's something that comes up a lot. You might see one of your competitors do something and think, oh, I've got to go out and do the same thing, or I've got to, do something better than that. But it might not be something actually that's worth focusing on in the larger scheme of things. And so you don't want to have the shoot from the hip mentality where you're reacting to every little thing that comes along and taking action right away. Sometimes it's best, as I think you said in this point, not to take action right away, to really think about it, make sure, is this particular battle worth fighting for? Is this the hill I want to die on? I guess we're using every military and war cliche in the book in this session, to stick with the art of the war. But I think that's kind of what this is, and this is how it's differentiated from just doing your research, right?
It reminds me of a story up in Canada when we had a media company. I don't know if you remember the taxi advertising media company. And we launched the company at the same time as another company. And we spent 7 years fighting it out. There was just not enough profitability for two companies in the market. So we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars battling it out. And finally, we resolved that by purchasing our competitor. We ended up having to buy them out. We weakened them enough. We did weaken them a lot, and we put them on the ropes. So we got them to the point where they said, we just want out of this business. We don't want to do this anymore. And we bought them for a pretty low price. But it was a brutal battle. Brutal. And you don't want to get stuck in those things. All right. So lesson number 6, about culture. All right. It's all about creating a great culture for your company, right, Rucha?
Oh, yes, yes. Um, that you need to take care of your team. Essentially, that is what that section says. The lesson number 6 is all about having a strong culture. So you are taking care of your team. When we say take care of, there is this Sun Tzu's quote that a successful leader treats his men as he would his beloved son, and they would follow him into the deepest valley. And he also talks about how you need to have a good reward system in place to make them feel appreciated. At the same time, there should also be some sternness and discipline also. So, to keep a balance, because otherwise they would be spoiled, right? You don't want to make your team spoil, but at the same time, you want them to feel appreciated, and having the right balance is what I would call a strong culture. And that is how it aligns with an entrepreneur as well, because they are the people who are running the business, and they are the integral part of the business. And that is why it is essential to have staff loyalty as well. It's just so underrated, and it's something that we still need to remind entrepreneurs and business owners every day. And that speaks for itself, that how the notion of strong work culture is just still so underrated. But still, I would say that it is absolutely necessary if you want to, achieve the business. So that is what a strong culture is all about,
I
because
also
a leader
think,
can.
sorry,
Yeah.
I also think in reading your article, this particular section talks a lot about leadership too. And I think even if you go back to the days of Sun Tzu, if you watch many movies of war in past times, oftentimes the general, the king even, would go into battle and be up there right on the front lines with their soldiers. And I think that's part of a leadership thing. And I think in business too, it's equally important that the leaders are not just sitting in their offices behind closed doors, but show their team that they are prepared to roll up their sleeves and get involved in the battle alongside the rest of the employees, and not just be there telling people what to do, but actually partaking in what's necessary to get the job done and win the battle.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to tour Zappos in Las Vegas. And it's interesting you say that, Jeff, because the CFO and the CEO at the time had their desks, their stations were out in the open. They didn't have private offices. And, if you do know Zappos, you know that they had done a great job creating a culture and promoting a particular set of values to their employees. I remember one of them was we like to hire weird people, and they really did try to embrace the diversity and weirdness in everyone. And I thought that was just very cool. And they really lived their culture. They lived their values, and it was something. It was something. I think they probably did one of the best jobs I've seen in corporate America or for startups with respect to culture. And I think they are a good example. Jihan, you're on stage. Do you have any thoughts about culture or the art of war, or anything in related to this topic today?
Um, well, thank you. Thank you very much for calling. I would like to say that in the art of wars and startups, we really need to think about um, when in colonization and also in startups as well, as far as coming from Africa's or different dimensions, not just only in Africans, but also in different dimensions. Nobody is really realizing that it's not only about Africans, it's also about Middle Easterns and so on and so forth. And the fact that when it comes to the art of war, it's also Africanism, and nobody really talks about that. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, these principles are pretty applicable, you know, all over the world, and then we're trying to relate it back to startups. Well, I do want to say have enough time here to talk about number 7, but do you have any more thoughts on culture, Rucha, before you talk to us about taking risks?
Oh, yes, yes.
Well,
Sorry, Rucha. Yeah, go ahead, Rucha.
No, no. If Jihan wants to say something, please continue.
no, for me, in the art of wars and understanding, we really need to think about who is giving us wars, and who are we to be giving others as wars, and by way of colonization, by way of wars, by way of other things. So we really need to think about that.
Well, again, thanks for that. We appreciate those thoughts and comments, and we do want to see if we can get to number 7, Rucha.
Yes, the number 7 is taking risks without being reckless. Right. So it's kind of a self-explanatory, because when we talk about risk, we talk about taking smarter risks where you are not being rash, because then it would only lead to your own destruction. Right. Instead, you could take a step back and do your due diligence, and have all your resources in place before you make the decision of taking risks. And that is what this is about. I also talked in my article about a minimum viable product, where you just put together your core features and present it to the audience, whether the product is unique enough or whether there is enough demand for it, instead of putting millions of dollars for in developing that product. You just go with the pilot phase. It's like doing soft launching before you do full scale launch. That is what I was talking when I was talking about taking risks without being reckless. And there's also about, how you just do the analysis, and you just do testing, endless testings, and you never get to the point where you would turn your idea into product. That is also something which you should avoid doing. Just launch your minimum viable product and look at the market response, and then you go ahead with the idea which you had, because now you have validated your idea, and you do have some numbers in place which would justify your idea as well. That would help you make that decision to make a full scale launch of that business. In this way, you are neither reckless nor you are making any dumb risk. You are making a smart risk, and you have made a smart decision for your business, which would also help you, like save millions of dollars and your time and your resources. Because if your idea want to work, then you're gonna lose all of that, and a failure is not something you would want to deal with recklessly. Instead, you take smarter risks. You test out first, you study first, you assess the market first, you check your idea first before you go ahead on a full scale.
Yeah, I mean, I remember.
Wait,
Uh,
can I just say
sorry,
something?
Gian, just hold on, Gian. I remember our last company, Jeff. We had a saying: "Do crazy things, not sorry, yeah, do crazy things, not stupid things." And it really is all about promoting the idea of uh, that you can take a risk in the company. It's actually, it's we embrace employees taking risks so that they can succeed. Like this, the one of the challenges larger companies get into is they don't embrace that kind of culture. And I think that having a culture where people can take those risks and try something new, so important. The other thing you talk about is testing, and I know with paw.com, we're a products based company and we do a lot of testing. We'll do a first generation product, and we'll look at it, and then we'll order 100 units and test it, and if that works, then we'll order 1,000 units. So that's interesting as well.
Yep.
Oh yes. Yeah, please, Jeffrey, go
No,
ahead.
I was agreeing with Colin, and I like in reading your article with this particular lesson, the notion of before you go into battle, you need to understand the cost of war, And even when you win, there's always going to be a cost. So taking risks without being reckless, um, making crazy decisions but not stupid decisions are ways of going about it where you understand that there are some risks, but those and costs, but those risks and costs won't be devastating if you do it properly.
Yes, yes, that sums up pretty well again. So it's like there are people who would, aim for perfection, and there is often the notion which says that, when it comes to entrepreneurship, there is no such thing as perfection. You just improve your things based on the learnings you have. You stay focused and you make improvements. How we talk about getting feedbacks, constantly running tests and improving your products, making upgradations as you go, and that's how you go for excellence, and that's how you become from good to great. And you never stop doing that if you want to win the business, because constant innovation is something that would keep you ahead from your competitors. And at the same time, again, just because there is the profit going in a particular direction, it doesn't mean you just jump on, you check the debt and you check the risk, you check how devastating it would be if it is not successful. And after a careful analysis, you make the decision of going ahead. And that is why it is very important to, making that choice, have the patience of being, the not being reckless. It takes a lot, because when you are, you have this idea, you're very passionate about it, and you be like, no, no, what I'm thinking is correct, you go with the guts. But I say, you make a combination of both. You have data backing your idea, and you have your own experience, which would give you the confidence you need to achieve that success. And that is why it is very much needed. And if you have doubts whether you would be able to do it or not, it means it's something you should probably not be doing.
Wow. Wow. This was such a, incredible hour. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun sort of going back and forth and talking about, how business and war and startups are connected. We'll be sure to link your article on the website. If you can go back and listen to any of these episodes at startup.club. We've now got, I think this was episode number 76 or 77. But in either case, you can go back and you can listen to those episodes. This was very interesting, and really appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon, Rucha, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you. It had been a very nice experience for me as well. Yeah, I thought we could talk more about it, because the discussion about the art of war and how it would relate to startups is like we can talk all night and we still would be talking about different strategies and how it would relate to startups, and how things you need to be doing or things you not be doing to achieve the goal you have or have the success. And how you should be running your business, and have that target market share you have in your mind, assessing all the strengths and weaknesses, summing up everything we've discussed so far in this one line, that it would take all night and we still wouldn't be over that, considering the depth of this book. So it has been a really fascinating discussing everything so far with you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome to Clubhouse. I know you'll be welcome on stage whenever you come into Startup Club. You're a very wise person, and we learned a lot today. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. In fact, next week we have a lawyer. She's probably one of the best lawyers who know how to raise money for your startup, and she's going to talk to us about crowdfunding, Reggae Plus, like all the unique tools you can use to raise money for your startup. And that's next Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern. And we will see you again on the show next week. Have a good one. Bye. Thanks, Jeff.
Can I just say,
Sorry, we had a
only
hard stop. I apologize, but we had a hard stop. So we'll try to get you on again next week again, Jihan. But thank you very much.